Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our next session on Taj al-Arus, al-Hawi, Li Tahdhib, al-Nufus, the crown of the bridegroom in that which contains. So this is the name of the book. That is actually what honors you and what makes you look beautiful and honorable, in that which contains the refinement of the soul, disciplining the self. And that title itself, if you go back to it, is to tell us where real glory, status and honor comes from, and that is by refining our character, obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what the author talks about in his discourse in this particular work. So Imam Ibn Atā'illah talks about various topics. The one he mentions that we're going to go through today is to do with the world and to do with eating first and foremost. And he says you only eat to live and not live to eat. So a very famous saying, very important saying, and something we need to really take into regard. If we live to eat, then we'll be wasting our time. He says here, you are like those things that are found abundantly in the places where worms reside. Right? Food is your goal, and this is what you like. Furthermore, then the likes of you are found abundantly amongst beasts. The fastest horse is the lean one. In other words, it's not about the food intake, it's about using the resources we have to ready ourselves for this life, and not just to think about what we can enjoy in this life. You say tonight, I shall reduce my food intake because you know it's good. And by the way, food intake and the tongue and the mouth in general is one of the most powerful organs of the human body, the tongue itself and the concept of consumption of food. The Prophet actually said in the hadith, whoever guarantees what's between his jaws and what's between his thighs, I'll guarantee for him paradise. And the tongue has a direct effect on the heart. The Prophet said you won't believe until your hearts are steadfast, istiqamah, mustaqim, and your hearts won't be steadfast and straight and upright until your tongues are straight and upright. So the truthfulness, sidq, is a big part of iman. Tasdeeq is believing and affirmation, and so that comes from the tongue, and the tongue is very powerful. The dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of Allah, the recitation of the Quran, it's on the tongue. And similarly, the consumption of food and what we take into our bodies really represents and affects who we become. So fast food, junk food produces laziness and junk. That's what it's called. It's called junk food. I mean, the name itself it should scare us away. Why are we putting junk into ourselves? What do we expect to come out? What do we expect it to produce? A lack of nutrients, a lack of healthy food is going to produce a lack of health, a lack of goodness, and we'll find lethargy and lack of energy and a feeling of sort of inactivity and laziness, and we don't see ourselves rise to worship or rise to good. Diet has a massive impact on that, and of course the amount of food has an impact on that as well, which is what Imam Ibn Atā'illah is referring to here. So this is, then when food is presented before you, it is as if it is a long lost loved one. He's so eager for food. So this is something very, very important, that we don't regard food as the purpose of life. That's the point Imam Ibn Atā'illah is making here. So he says, get away from this. This is humiliation for you. This is a waste of time for you. And just turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get you away from overeating, from consumption of food. This is a topic in itself, obesity in today's day and age, and how young people are really growing up obese and so forth. So it's a big topic in itself. He moves on to talk about the same concept, and he says, "O slave, you are selective in choosing your delicacies. In fact, you are even selective in choosing the fodder for your riding beast. So you go around looking for the best food, for the best things for your car, for your house, for your furniture, etc. Yet you treat Allah without any thought. So you don't even think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes you turn over 20 watermelons until you find one that's really good. And when you go shopping for fruit or for something like that, you get the best one, you feel it, you touch it, you don't want it to be bad. It's not wrong, but look how much concern the Imam is saying we have just for a piece of fruit, which ultimate end is just, as he says here, is merely the bathroom. That's where it's going to go. You sit cross-legged when eating so that you can eat more. We like, getting a bit full in this position, let's move another position and eat a bit more. Look, this is what we do for food, for intake of food, for enjoyment. Yet when it comes to the prayer, you peck like a cockerel, with whisperings and bad thoughts going through your mind as you pray. So this is the reality check that we need to think about and reflect upon. And this is what this whole book is about. It's really for you to sit down and reflect over your life and rebuke yourself, and really think about where you're heading towards, and what you're doing with the blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, and the opportunities that are at your mercy. The similitude of you listening to wisdom but not acting according is only like that of someone who wears armor but does not fight. So we've got all this armor on, we've got all these weaponry, whatever, and there's no point to it, because we're not going to go to battle, we're not going to go engage. So listening to these talks, reading books, and becoming knowledgeable about Islam has no value except with good action, except with implementation and proactivity, and building on those intentions. Good intentions alone are not enough to make the changes and the betterment that's required in life. It requires some action, it requires implementation, it requires effort, a lot of effort sometimes, right? And it leads to fatigue, and it leads to times of toil and difficulty. But that's the challenge. That are we going to invest our resources and efforts into the journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or are we going to prefer the life of this world and the joys of this world, and just keep on investing our time, effort, energies and resources into this life that will not bring us any outcome, that will just be gone and disappear once we leave this world? It says, indeed our merchandise has been advertised, so is there a buyer out there? Indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you all what you need. You're going to buy and use this merchandise. Your value is that which you are occupied with. That's your value. You see what you're doing with your life, that is your status, that is your qadr, that is your how you are before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thus, if you're occupied with this world, then you have no value, because we've said and we know this world has no value before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's worthless, like a dead carcass. There's nothing to be taken from it apart from some little bit of benefit, and then khalas, it's done and dusted. The best thing that a slave can ask from Allah is that He makes him unwavering in his relationship to Him. Steadfastness. The greatest miracle is not flying, is not changing things around and making people amazed. It's you and your akhlaq, your characteristics. It's you and your worship, your ibadah. It's you and your khidmah, your service to others, and having steadfastness upon that. Not doing it erratically, not doing it here and there, but to be regular, to be steadfast, to be perseverant, and to remain in this continuity of good deeds over and over again. And this is the secret, by the way, of the awliya. The secret of the awliya is that regularity in worship, that perseverance, that continuity. This comes from of course, the secret of the awliya is from the Prophet ﷺ. Look at the 5 daily prayers, look at the regular fasting, look at the regular recitation of the Qur'an, the night prayer. Everything is regular in Islam. We don't just do a one-off act of worship in Islam. If you look at the acts of worship, they are periodical, they are timed. Time is a major part of all acts of worship. Some are short, some are days, like fasting is a day. Some are several days, like Hajj. Some are once in a year, like the zakat. But it takes time to accumulate. You think of that all this accumulation and then giving it away. It's a challenge for the nafs, and all these acts of worship are here to get us to submit and surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, the 5 daily prayers and prayer in general, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes sacrifice. You have to leave the world, and Allah wants us to do that just 5 times a day, by the way. Not like every moment of our lives. We should, and Allah is deserving of every moment of our lives, but His request is 5 times a day. His obligation made upon us is 5 times a day. Are we responding to that? Are we how are we going to answer to that? Because that's an obligation, that's a duty we owe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and having firmness and regularity is the best thing we could get. One of the things that really I would like to mention, and I think we just not mention enough anymore, to be honest, a lot of these discourses and talks and so forth, we miss the importance of salah. And be around people who pray if you don't pray. Be around people who love the prayer. Try to pray one prayer if you're not praying. Imam Ghazali said, who was asked, what's the ruling on the one who doesn't pray? What he meant, what's the ruling? Is he a believer? Is he a kafir? Is he a sinful person? What's the ruling? What do we think of that person, etc.? What ruling is given by Allah? He said the ruling regarding that person is that you take him by the hand and you go and pray together. That's the ruling. That's what you need to know and do. It's not about finding fault with others and saying he doesn't pray is bad. The ruling is, the goal is we help others change. So don't miss the prayer. The prayer is everything. This is what will be the deciding factor in everything. The prayer, the prayer, the prayer. As-salah, as-salah, as-salah. So please be around those who pray. Please do the wudu and sit and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and communicate with Him through the salah. Communicate with Him through the blessings of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the bowing and the prostration, and show your servitude practically, reality. If we can't bow down to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can't do the act of salah, it shows it's a massive sign of our arrogance, our lack of submission. And this is a danger that ultimately, and this is in the hadith, that the difference between the believer and the disbeliever is the salah, is the performance or the lack thereof of the prayer. So the ritual prayer is something that we need to be around and practice and keep as part of our daily routine, our daily acts as human beings. Should not be devoid of the thought of salah, the preparation for salah and the performance of salah and thanking Allah for salah, the prayer, the connection to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So seek guidance and steadfast from Him, which is for you to be with Allah under all circumstances. That's really what it's about, to be with Allah in all states, all affairs, which He is pleased for you, and that is conforming to what the Prophet ﷺ conveyed from Allah. So in obedience to Allah, we follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sunnah, the Qur'an and Sunnah, and that's what is obedience. That's what is the right place to be. Whoever expends pure love for Allah, Allah will make him drink from His pure generosity. So now there's a factor here that comes into it, that in this world we have love of the world, real love. If you really have that love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the love for the akhirah, you'll act and behave in a way that will show Allah, show everyone. You behave, it's not to show off, it's just, it will become a reality that you will behave in a way that you are now benefiting yourself, benefiting those around you, and benefiting your akhirah, or building your akhirah. This is really what a true lover of Allah does. True love isn't just to sit in a cave and I love Allah and I'm away from people. No, the Prophet ﷺ was the greatest lover, and he was there to guide mankind, to build a civilization and a society of harmony and productivity and goodness. The Muslim ummah that came from his guidance and teaching has benefited the world and all of us more than anything else. Medicine came through his inspiration and guidance, and he set the foundations for that. We have systems of finance and numbers and maths and all things that we could now think of. Majority of them there is an Islamic root, and that comes from the words of the Prophet ﷺ, the guidance, the inspiration, the fact that it's an act of reward with Allah. This is why the Muslims did it, because if it's Islamic, if it's part of Islam, then that was something that Allah wanted us to do. That's something of reward, of a form of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we talk about real love of Allah and worship of Allah, I mean that everything around you should be good. Your family, your home, your community, your neighbors. The believer he is not a believer. The Prophet negated Iman from the one who spends the night asleep and full whilst his neighbor goes hungry. It doesn't mention Muslim or non-Muslim. It mentions neighbor. It mentions humanity. It mentions this idea of true love of Allah, because it's about your Iman. If you have love of Allah, if you have faith, then you can't allow somebody to suffer. Your neighbor, somebody has such a great right over you. The Prophet said, I thought Jibreel Islam came and enjoined so many rights and so many duties upon me for the neighbor, and to the extent I thought he was going, Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, to the extent that I thought he was going to tell me and command me that the neighbor would inherit from his neighbor. So who inherits from you? Your father, your mother, your children, your spouses. These are the main sort of categories, brothers, sisters, and others as well, if those close individuals are not around, children especially. And these people are your closest family, your loved ones. You spend your life with them and they have unconditional love for you, and vice versa, etc. The Prophet is saying that Jibreel Islam talked about the neighbor so much, and the importance and the rights of the neighbor so much. I thought he was going to be included. The neighbor would have been included in the inheritance alongside your mother, father, and children and spouses. This is the level of duty and service and help we need to provide our neighbor. Iman is connected to love of Allah, is connected to that. You can't be a lover of Allah and have true love if your neighbor is suffering and you're not helping him or her. The similitude of the spiritual wayfarer is that like that of someone who digs for water, but little by little until he discovers water after much fatigue. Right? So it's not easy to get there. Right? Don't give up. Don't think, oh, I'm digging, nothing's there. No, there's a time where the opening, a time where the result will come. Yeah, and even when you get the first glimpse, don't think you've got there and stop. Keep digging. There's more to come. We don't just stop when we achieve one job. We want promotions. We want, wage increases. We want bonuses. We want to, get an easier position, a more sort of managerial and relaxed position, and more responsibilities, less hours, more pay. Whatever. We always trying to gain in our dunya and build more and more and more, and we put the effort and fatigue in, and we get there, alhamdulillah. By the way, that is tawfiq and guidance and successes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it comes to our deen and our worship, how many of us can say we've attained? We feel the connection. Our hearts are dead, more or less. In this regard is a story I was reading actually about worship in the time of Musa alayhi salam, in the time of Bani Israel, and he was playing with his beard all the time. So he was always concerned about his beard and combing it and preparing it. And he was a worshipper though, so he worshipped day and night. So he was most like active people in worship. And he was also wanting to feel the spirituality, the connection to Allah, and so forth. And he was always concerned about his appearance and so forth as well. And he couldn't find it, so he told Musa alayhi salam, he says, when you speak to Allah, ask him about me. Why can't I find the sweetness of my faith and my worship and this spirituality and connection? I pray so much, and he prayed day and night, and he fasted and he did zikr and he remembered Allah, but just nothing was coming of it. It's a question we need to pose ourselves. Do we feel that? Have we got that? So he asked Musa alayhi salam, because he speaks to Allah as a prophet, Kalimullah, to when he speaks, can you ask him subhanahu wa ta'ala, can you get guidance for me? So Musa alayhi salam, next time in the conversation with Allah, whenever he speaks to Allah, brings this issue up, and Allah knows he's even asked him to do that. Of course, Allah knows everything. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says there's a reason for why he's not achieving what he's achieving. The reason is he has not got sincerity. He lacks sincerity in his worship. He does not have sincerity, and without sincerity, what is worship? What's the product? What's the fruit? It's nothing. Without, Imam Ibn Atā'illah says in his hikam, actions are like propped up images, suwarun qa'ima, statues. They're lifeless images. Their life, there's the soul and spirit of the action, the life breath that makes it a reality and something that you can benefit from, is the secret of ikhlas. Sirri wujud al-ikhlas, the secret of having sincerity, ikhlas, within the action. Otherwise it's worth nothing. It's just a purposeless, exercise, bodily movement. Actions are very important in Islam. So intentions are very important behind the actions in Islam, as we know. So the story continues that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and the reason why he hasn't got sincerity is he's too concerned about his beard. He's always checking it, he's always combing it, he's always doing this, and it's not allowing him to be sincere in his worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to me. So Musa alayhi salam goes back to the individual, the worshipper, and starts saying to him, you need to be sincere, you need to be focusing on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he doesn't directly go to say it's your beard that's the problem. And eventually he says, look, one of the main reasons is because you're so concerned about your beard and your appearance. How can you then have sincerity? Since it just negates sincerity. What you need is to look after yourself, but not be so engrossed in it, not be so worried about it. This was the son of the Prophet ﷺ. He would comb his hair and he would say that khalas, that's it. He's combing your hair too much is actually disliked. The Prophet, it's a form of vanity, and okay, obviously going to an event or occasion, you check yourself beforehand. That's etiquette. That's not bad. But just to constantly check, and just adjust a little hair or do this or do that or this, out of that wanting to look good all the time and show off and be the sort of one that stands out with the appearance is not the goal of life of Islam. And he went and he told him this, and he said, yes, you're right, I do so much, and he actually felt guilty over that, and I will stop looking at my beard, and I will stop looking at my appearance, and hopefully. And Jibreel Islam comes to Musa Islam in the story and says, look, his beard was distracting from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his beard continues to distract him from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First he was concerned about how good he looked, now he's concerned about how not to look after it. So he can't focus on Allah. And the lesson is, you can't focus on Allah and your worship and find the fruits and secrets if you've always got some distraction from the world, whether it's in a good or bad way, whether it's you want it or you don't want it. You shouldn't make that the focus of it being there or not being there. Do what you got to do, and then just blot it out. Blank. It's done. Why would you think about it after it's done? Leave it to the next time. Leave it out of the worship. Try and focus. This is what Salah is. It's a time to move away from the world, the dunya, throw it behind you, and just turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even for that 5-10 minutes. This is our problem. We take the dunya into our worship, take the dunya into our intentions, take the dunya into our turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, worship Allah for the sake of worshipping Him sometimes. Worship Allah to build your connection to Him, and not for anything else, and don't worry about what you look, the way you look sometimes. And this is mentioned in the books of fiqh. Sometimes they say, actually, and even the books of fiqh, it does mention this, that if somebody wears a turban and feels like this grandiosity and specialness in wearing a turban in prayer, then you should take it off and pray bareheaded, and turn in humiliation and humility and humbleness before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You think you're wearing special clothes and stuff is making your prayer better, and you're special now standing. Yes, we do that, but the etiquette is to do that to honor the prayer and to stand before Allah in a presentable way. But if it's making you feel this conceit, you're thinking how special you are, and you're focused on that more than the prayer, then it's a distraction from the prayer. So then throw yourself down and humiliate yourself and humble yourself without anything on, just your normal clothes. Just don't worry about that. So we need to realize that that is not the goal. They are just etiquettes. The goal is Allah. The goal is the pleasure of Allah. The goal is turning to Allah with sincerity, and we will only find that when we actually blot out all of these other things, inshallah ta'ala. It says the similitude of the majdub is like that of someone who has sought water and a cloud brought rain for him to take from it without fatigue. So the one who's pulled to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's looking for water, but all of a sudden what happens? A cloud, a massive downpour occurs, and all of a sudden he's flooded, drowned in the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's pulled to Allah. So may Allah bring and shower down upon us His mercy, His kindness, He attract us to Him, pull us to Him, give us steadfastness, Rahim subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you give yourself every appetite that it desires, so this is the discourse here, food, just harming yourself. If you give yourself whatever it desires and seeks, then you're like someone whose house is a snake, and that rather than being worried about a snake and stuff, you say, let's feed that snake, let's feed it, let's fatten it up. Then what happens in the end? It will come and bite and sting and kill. If Allah placed in you a spirit without a self, then you would have been obeyed and never disobeyed. So we haven't got just a ruh and a positive spirit, because we would have been good. We've got a nafs in there as well, right? We've got an ego in there, nafs, right? In contrast, if He had placed in you a self without a spirit, then you would have disobeyed and never obeyed. So if you just had the nafs in there, no spiritual, no connection with Allah, then you would just followed your nafs, and that would have been just doing what you want, enjoying yourself, not bothered about anything but whatever brings you enjoyment. Consequently, you waver. He has placed with you, consequently you waver, right? In other words, we're in between. He has placed within you a heart, a spirit, a self, and caprice. We've got all these components. Our nafs brings about the shahwa, right? Desires. Our hearts, the spiritual hearts, bring about the spiritual connection, the spirit, i.e. the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like a bee in which He has placed a sting and honey. So the bee gives honey, which is very, very beautiful and productive and beneficial. But there's also a sting that can kill, and it kills it. So when it stings, it actually damages itself, right? The honey is by virtue of His benevolence, right? The honey isn't the direct work of the bee. It's by the benevolence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's Allah's kindness. Allah wanted to break the claim of the self by the presence of the heart, and the claim of the heart by the presence of the self. So this is the beautiful thing. If you're just given a heart, everyone's got pure hearts. With angels, there's no self-attainment. This is why humans are potentially greater than angels, because of that choice and that ability to, and the potential to attain realization of Allah, ma'rifatullah, worship of Allah, connection with Allah, building your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and your worship of Him, that potential and that ability to increase and increase and increase, and the Prophet is the first and foremost, and those who follow him after him and so forth, is what makes us that much greater. Now that doesn't come without there being a way to attain it, and that's why we have the struggle. That's why we have a choice, and that choice comes with an option of good, an option of bad. That choice comes with a spiritual heart and an ego, and then once that's set up, then we can either attain, and that experience, that journey will be the whole causal factor to understanding the gain. Because at the end, Allah could just have put us at the end and said, this is it. We wouldn't understand what that is. We wouldn't comprehend what that is. We wouldn't value what that is. Right? It doesn't work the same. So Allah put us at the beginning with nothing and told us to go and achieve that. And for that to be achieved, there has to be a cause and effect. There has to be a journey of events, of efforts. And so Allah's put us in a world of trials and tribulations, put us in a world of cause and effect. You need food to sustain yourself. You need worship to grow that heart. So the whole idea is, don't concentrate on the worldly causal factors that just are mundane life, everyday life, that's it. Look at the causal factors of our deen, of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and build those. Right? What does prayer do for me? What does charity do for me? If you learn those things and we practice them, most importantly, as we said, they will bring about the causal factor change and into our spirituality, into our heart, into our connection with Allah. And we've got to remove the dunya. The dunya is the barrier. It's a test, back or forth, right? Which way you're going to go. So this is why it's been set up like this, so that the car doesn't just say, I'm there, I'm fantastic. No, I got there through this struggle, so I know I can fall back. I know this is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you learn a lot along this journey, inshallah ta'ala. And I think that's where we can remember for today and finish there today, inshallah, and we can move on to more of Imam Ibn Atā'illah's advice to come. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi